Sergeant Michael Thompson had served the British royal family for 12 years. His uniform was always perfectly pressed, his boots polished to mirror shine, and his dedication unwavering. At 42 years old, he had protected members of the royal household through countless public events, private gatherings, and overseas tours. His colleagues respected him, his superiors trusted him, and the royal family themselves had come to know him by name. On this particular Tuesday morning in March, Michael received orders that filled him with pride and nervous energy. He was to accompany King Charles III on a crucial diplomatic mission to Edinburgh. The king would be meeting with Scottish Parliament leaders to discuss important matters of state, and Michael had been personally selected as part of the security detail. The assignment was significant for several reasons. First, it demonstrated the trust placed in Michael by his commanding officers. Second, it would be his first time working directly with the king since Charles had ascended to the throne. Michael had served during Queen Elizabeth's reign and had interacted with then Prince Charles on numerous occasions. But this would be different. This would be his first official duty protecting the new monarch. Michael spent the evening before the trip meticulously preparing his equipment and reviewing security protocols. His wife Sarah watched him with a mixture of pride and concern. She knew how much this assignment meant to him, but she also understood the weight of responsibility that came with protecting the sovereign. Their two teenage children, Emma and James, were equally proud of their father's role, though they had grown accustomed to his absences for royal duties. The morning of departure arrived crisp and clear. Michael arrived at the palace at dawn, joining the advanced security team for their final briefing. The plan was straightforward. They would fly from London to Edinburgh on a commercial flight, maintaining a low profile while ensuring the king's safety. The return journey was scheduled for the same evening, allowing the king to be back in London for other commitments the following day. As Michael checked his gear one final time, he felt the familiar surge of purpose that came with each royal assignment. He had dedicated his career to service, following in the footsteps of his father who had served in the military, and his grandfather who had been a palace guard during World War II. For the Thompson family, serving the crown was more than a job. It was a calling, a tradition, and an honor that connected them to generations of British history. The security team gathered in the palace courtyard as the black vehicles that would transport them to the airport arrived. Michael took his position, knowing that in a few hours he would be standing beside the King of England, ready to face whatever challenges the day might bring. Little did he know that this routine assignment would soon become one of the most memorable experiences of his entire career, testing not just his professional skills but his personal resilience in ways he never could have imagined. The journey to Heathrow Airport proceeded without incident. Michael sat in the second security vehicle, reviewing the day's schedule and maintaining radio contact with the advance team already positioned in Edinburgh. The king traveled in the lead vehicle, accompanied by his private secretary and the head of his protection detail. Despite the early hour, traffic moved smoothly through London's streets. At Heathrow, the royal party was escorted through a private terminal, avoiding the crowds and potential security risks of the main departure areas. Michael had made this journey dozens of times before, but he never lost his appreciation for the precise choreography involved in moving a member of the royal family safely through a major airport. Every step was planned, every contingency considered, every person involved thoroughly vetted. The flight to Edinburgh was scheduled on British Airways, with first-class seats reserved for the king and his immediate entourage. Michael and the other security personnel were booked in business class, allowing them to maintain visual contact with the royal party while providing an additional security buffer. This arrangement had worked flawlessly on previous occasions. However, as they approached the boarding gate, Michael noticed unusual activity among the airline staff. Several employees were engaged in heated discussions with their supervisors, gesturing toward computer screens and shaking their heads with obvious frustration. The gate agent appeared particularly stressed, repeatedly checking passenger lists and making urgent phone calls. When boarding began, Michael presented his ticket along with his official credentials. The gate agent scanned his boarding pass, frowned at her computer screen, and called over a supervisor. After a brief conversation conducted in whispers, the supervisor approached Michael with an apologetic expression. "I'm terribly sorry, sir," the supervisor said, "but there's been an overbooking situation. We need to move you to economy class for this flight." We'll provide compensation, of course, and ensure you're comfortable. Michael felt his stomach drop. This wasn't just about personal comfort. This was about security protocol. His assigned seat in business class was strategically chosen to allow him optimal positioning for protecting the king. Moving to economy would compromise his ability to respond quickly to any potential threat. I'm afraid that's not possible, Michael replied firmly but politely. I'm on official royal duty. My seating assignment is a matter of security, not preference. The supervisor's expression hardened slightly. I understand your disappointment, but this is a business decision. The passenger we're accommodating in business class is a valued customer. You'll have to accept the economy seat or find alternative transportation. Michael showed his royal protection credentials again, explaining the security implications of the seating change. Other passengers in the boarding queue began to notice the delay, some craning their necks to see what was causing the holdup. The situation was becoming exactly the kind of public spectacle that royal security worked tirelessly to avoid. The head of the King's protection detail, Chief Inspector Williams, noticed the commotion at the gate and quickly approached. Williams was a veteran with 25 years of royal security experience, and he immediately understood the gravity of the situation. A compromised security position could put the entire mission at risk. What's the problem here? Williams asked the airline supervisor, his tone professional but firm. The supervisor repeated her explanation about overbooking, emphasizing that the business class seat was needed for a very important customer. Williams examined the situation with the calculating eye of someone trained to assess threats and vulnerabilities. He knew that protocol demanded specific positioning for security personnel, and deviating from established procedures was never taken lightly. Meanwhile, other passengers continued boarding around them. Some recognized the subtle signs of a royal presence: the coordinated movement of well-dressed men speaking into earpieces, the careful positioning near the gate, the way airline staff deferred to certain individuals. A few began taking discreet photos with their phones, adding another layer of complexity to an already tense situation. Michael stood his ground, knowing that accepting the economy seat would be more than just personal inconvenience. It would represent a failure to maintain security standards. His years of training had taught him that protocol existed for reasons that weren't always obvious to civilians. Every aspect of royal protection was designed with overlapping layers of security, and removing even one layer could have unpredictable consequences. The airline supervisor made several more phone calls, clearly hoping to find an alternative solution. However, her tone suggested that she was receiving firm instructions from higher-ups in the company. The valued customer taking Michael's seat was apparently someone whose business the airline was desperate to retain. Possibly a frequent flyer with significant financial influence. Look, the supervisor finally said with evident frustration, I've done everything I can. The decision comes from corporate level. Either you take the economy seat or you don't fly today. I'm sorry, but that's final. Williams stepped closer to Michael and spoke in low tones. They both understood the implications. If Michael couldn't maintain his assigned position, they would need to restructure the entire security arrangement on short notice. This could mean delaying the flight, rearranging other personnel, or potentially compromising the King's schedule. As this conversation continued, other members of the security team maintained their positions around the gate area. They had been trained to expect the unexpected, but airline logistics creating security challenges was a relatively uncommon occurrence. Their training emphasized adaptability, but it also stressed the importance of maintaining established protocols whenever possible. The situation had reached an impasse. The airline refused to budge on their decision. Michael couldn't accept a position that compromised security protocol, and the royal party needed to reach Edinburgh on schedule. Time was running short, and the gate agent announced that boarding would close in 10 minutes, adding pressure to an already stressful situation. What happened next surprised everyone present. King Charles himself, who had been discreetly observing the situation from a nearby seating area, approached the gate counter. His presence immediately changed the entire atmosphere. Conversation stopped, airline staff straightened their posture, and even the most distracted passengers noticed that something significant was happening. The king had overheard enough of the conversation to understand the situation. Throughout his life, he had witnessed the dedication of the men and women who protected the royal family. He understood that their service often required personal sacrifices, and he had great respect for the professionalism they brought to their duties. "Excuse me," the king said to the airline supervisor, his voice calm but carrying unmistakable authority. "I believe there's been some confusion regarding my security officer's seating arrangement." The supervisor's face went pale as she realized she was speaking directly to the monarch. She had been so focused on corporate instructions and passenger management that the full implications of displacing a royal protection officer hadn't registered. Now faced with King Charles himself, the situation took on an entirely different dimension. "Your Majesty," she stammered, "I was just following company policy regarding overbooking situations. We have procedures for these circumstances." The king nodded thoughtfully. "I'm sure you do. However, I think you might not fully understand the nature of Sergeant Thompson's duties. He's not simply a passenger with a ticket preference. He's a highly trained professional whose positioning on this aircraft is carefully calculated to ensure the safety of everyone aboard." Other passengers nearby had now realized they were witnessing a direct interaction between the King of England and airline staff. Some began recording with their phones, while others simply stood in stunned silence. The gate area had taken on an almost surreal quality, as everyday travel logistics collided with royal protocol. Michael felt a mixture of gratitude and professional concern. While he deeply appreciated the king's intervention, he also worried about drawing additional attention to what should have been a low-profile security operation. However, he trusted the king's judgment and remained at attention, ready to follow whatever direction the situation might take. Chief Inspector Williams watched carefully, prepared to step in if needed, but recognizing that the king was handling the situation with characteristic diplomacy. Williams had worked with the royal family long enough to know that King Charles possessed both natural authority and genuine concern for those who served him. The airline supervisor looked around desperately, clearly hoping that someone from her management team might appear to help handle this unprecedented situation. Corporate policies hadn't prepared her for a direct conversation with the British monarch about passenger seating arrangements. She was caught between company instructions and the reality of who she was now dealing with. "Perhaps," the king continued gently, "there might be some flexibility in your procedures when it involves matters of official security. I'm confident that British Airways would want to ensure the safety and security of all passengers, wouldn't you agree?" The airline supervisor excused herself and rushed to make urgent phone calls to her management team. Within minutes, she returned with a completely different demeanor. Corporate headquarters had been contacted, the situation had been explained, and new instructions had been issued immediately. "Your Majesty," she said, now speaking with genuine respect and concern, "I sincerely apologize for this confusion. Sergeant Thompson's original business class seat has been restored. We've made alternative arrangements for the other passenger." The resolution came with remarkable speed once the full context was understood. The airline's corporate office had immediately recognized the serious nature of displacing royal security personnel and had authorized whatever measures were necessary to correct the situation. The valued customer who had been given Michael's seat was quietly moved to a first-class upgrade on a later flight. With additional compensation for the inconvenience, Michael felt profound relief, not just for the restored seating arrangement, but for the king's willingness to personally intervene. In all his years of service, he had never experienced such direct support from a member of the royal family during a logistical challenge. It demonstrated a level of care and respect for the security team that went far beyond mere professional courtesy. King Charles turned to Michael before returning to his own pre-boarding area. "Sergeant Thompson, your dedication to duty is noted and appreciated. Thank you for maintaining your standards even when it wasn't easy." "It's my honor to serve, Your Majesty," Michael replied, standing even straighter despite the emotional impact of the moment. The boarding process resumed smoothly after that. Michael took his restored business class seat, positioned exactly where security protocol demanded. From this vantage point, he could maintain visual contact with the king while monitoring other passengers and responding quickly to any potential concerns. As the aircraft taxied for takeoff, Michael reflected on what had just occurred. The king had not only resolved a logistical problem, but had done so in a way that demonstrated genuine understanding of and respect for the security team's professional requirements. It was a reminder of why so many people dedicated their careers to royal service, not just for the prestige or tradition, but because they were serving individuals who understood and valued their sacrifice. The flight to Edinburgh proceeded without further incident. Michael maintained his professional vigilance while also processing the morning's events. His colleagues in the security detail had witnessed the entire situation, and there was a subtle but noticeable increase in morale among the team. They had seen their work valued at the highest level, and it reinforced their commitment to excellence in their duties. As they approached Edinburgh, Michael prepared for the day's main events. The diplomatic meetings, the public appearances, the coordination with Scottish security forces, all of this still lay ahead. But the morning's experience had already made this assignment memorable in ways he never could have anticipated. The day in Edinburgh proved to be a complete success. King Charles's meetings with Scottish Parliament leaders were productive, addressing important constitutional matters and strengthening the relationship between the Crown and Scotland's governing body. Michael and the security team performed their duties flawlessly, ensuring the King's safety while maintaining the discreet presence that allowed the diplomatic work to proceed smoothly. During a brief break between meetings, Chief Inspector Williams approached Michael privately. "That was well handled this morning, Sergeant. Standing your ground on security protocol while remaining respectful, that's exactly what we need from our people." Michael appreciated the recognition from his superior, but he was even more struck by how the morning's events had affected the entire team's dynamic. There was a renewed sense of purpose among the security personnel, a feeling that their work was truly understood and valued by those they protected. The return flight to London was arranged with meticulous attention to seating arrangements. British Airways had apparently issued internal communications ensuring that such confusion would not occur again with royal security personnel. The gate staff in Edinburgh were exceptionally courteous and professional, clearly briefed on the importance of maintaining established security protocols. As they settled into their seats for the journey home, Michael noticed that King Charles made a point of personally thanking each member of the security team. This wasn't just a perfunctory gesture. The King took time to speak individually with each officer, acknowledging their specific contributions to the day's success. When the King reached Michael, he paused longer than with the others. "Sergeant Thompson, today reminded me of something important. The people who serve the Crown often face challenges that others don't fully understand. Your willingness to maintain standards, even when it would have been easier to compromise, reflects the very best of British service." "Thank you, Your Majesty. It means a great deal to hear that," Michael replied, feeling a deep sense of professional fulfillment. The flight home was smooth and uneventful. Michael used the time to complete his incident reports and prepare briefing notes for his superiors. However, his mind kept returning to the morning's events and their broader significance. In an era when traditional institutions faced increasing scrutiny and criticism, he had witnessed something that reinforced his faith in the value of dedicated public service. Upon returning to London, Michael was surprised to learn that the morning's incident had not gone unnoticed by palace officials. Within a few days, he received a formal commendation for his handling of the situation, recognizing both his adherence to security protocol and his professional demeanor under pressure. More importantly, the incident became part of ongoing discussions about improving coordination between royal security and civilian service providers. New protocols were developed to better communicate the security requirements for royal protection personnel, helping prevent similar situations in the future. Years later, Michael would look back on this assignment as a defining moment in his career. It wasn't the dramatic rescue or high-stakes security operation that movies might portray, but rather a quiet demonstration that dedication to duty and principle could be recognized and valued at the highest levels of service. For a man who had spent his career in the background, protecting others and maintaining discreet professionalism, it was a profound validation of his life's work and the traditions he had chosen to uphold.